want to just basically run through some images. I'm going to shut up and not say anything. Let's just get in the mood. Okay. Well, so grief, I'm assuming we all probably know this, but the grief is normal. It's one thing to say. I think it's important to realize that there's some inertia, the way medicine treats grief, and the way society at large treats grief. Here in the West, I think most of us experience that grief is something that you're allowed for a moment or two, some amount of sadness and distraction, but then pretty quickly we're expected to get back on the horse, as it were. And those of us who've actually grieved know that just doesn't work that way. I'm not sure that grief ever ends. But for my money, I think grief, okay, while it's normal and part of the human experience, what is it? Well, I think of it as the sort of process by which we humans metabolize loss. It's the way we digest reality and the way we move from one view of reality that's had to shift by virtue of loss. And the grief helps us segue to a new reality, a new frame. And somehow allows, if we allow ourselves to grieve, what we're doing is we're making that loss part of our lives, an active relationship. I think that's a really, really key distinction. For me in my own grieving, I thought it was something that early on, I thought it was something that I could just hold my breath and get through and be done with. I realized that A, that's not really possible, and B, I wouldn't want it to be possible, because there's nothing saying we have to really let go of the things we've lost. They're in us. I think we have to segue to a different relationship or a different dynamic with the folks and the things we lose, but they're in us, in our memory, in our bones. So grief is that process that makes that, allows for that to happen. And I think it's incredibly uncomfortable at times and odd. I think of it as really as a process in which you're actually altered. And I think societies, cultures that have embraced grief and have ritualized it, one of the common themes is not much is expected of folks who are in mourning, because you're discombobulated and necessarily. And so you're not asked to necessarily be acting normal per se. That's why I love cultures that mark grief with clothing or an armband or some way to note that this grief is happening, so handle with care. The other thing to appreciate about grief is it can be big and small. Personally, I've lost limbs, I've lost my sister, and I realized if I just look at my own response, the sensations that I have around those losses, they're not terrifically different from other losses that I've had in my life that seem smaller or less significant. I think the adjectives, the significances, the hierarchies we apply to our losses and to our sufferings, that's all made up. You don't have to do that. In some way, loss is loss. And we don't need to compare whose loss is bigger. I've done that with myself. It's a dead end.